Well, before I get rid of all the packing case for this lacer, what I'm going to do is a bit of a salvage job. All the nails in here, I've got to salvage all the nails. Now it's not because I'm mean, it's because I've got something in mind for them. Now a very good colleague of mine has donated me some surplus 5mm white Perspex. So I've got my sheet of acrylic and I have already drilled some holes through the acrylic. Hopefully they're going to be a perfect size that will allow me to push these nails through it snugly. That's all the nails in, but now I've got one more little task to do, and that is to go around and put all the heads in one direction, this direction. So I mentioned about the reflective properties of aluminium, and regardless of whether it's shiny or not, it's atomically reflective. And so what I'm going to do is to cover the bed, the work area, with a nail bed. So when we put our workpiece in here, it sits up above this layer of Perspex. It'll have lots of advantages to having an acrylic bed in the bottom there. It will help us to judge what power we've got and how much surplus power we've got going through the job. Because technically, if we're using just enough power to cut through here, we shouldn't make many marks on this bottom plate. But it doesn't matter if we do, because certainly there's not enough power in that head to cut through this piece and that piece with an air gap in between. It'll be just totally defocused by the time it gets down to the bottom layer there. And here we are, ready to actually start powering up the laser. We're going through a procedure of fitting all the bits and pieces onto it and turning on the power. So I think the first thing we're going to do is to sort out the water pump, which is down here. I've managed to fill up my little tank with distilled water. Well, we've given 3 pieces of tube, each about 1 metre long. Let's do it this way around. That's the water outlet, which means it's the return to the tank. Just press those on. And that's the water inlet, which means it's got to come from the top of the pump here. So we've got this very weird arrangement here. The fountain pump has been supplied with this outlet pipe, but the outlet pipe doesn't fit the hose that you're given. So the question is, what do we do? We've got this strange fitting here, which has been supplied as well. I've got no idea what it is, but all I can say is it does look as though on that end there you could push a piece of pipe, and that end there does fit, but there's a leaky bit in the side there. Oh, so it comes apart. And when I look inside here, yeah, it's possible that that piece of pipe there will fit over that bit on the inside there, which it does, and yes, that does fit in the top there. So we have actually been supplied with everything that we need. We can put the adapter in the top there. Well, that could be very convenient for me. 19mm. Right, there's our whole 19mm diameter. Fits perfectly. That allows me to plug that in. Now we've got to have a return pipe. We've put a 1/2 inch diameter hole in there, or 12mm, and we can now close that up, slip that through that hole there nicely, and I think I'll leave that above the water level so that I can see that water is flowing. I'll just tie those tubes together with tie wraps. Well, that's the water pump neatly installed. I think what we'll do, we'll test it to start with. We can put the mains cable in. So the mains cable plugs in here, and the water pump has got a 2-pin American connector on it, but we don't have to worry that it's American because it connects directly into this water pump supply here. So we'll make sure that the emergency stop switches up, and then we should be able to, so this control switch is basically on off. That was lucky. Down, sends the table down. So hopefully now we should be able to turn the water pump on. And sure enough, so we're going to open up the lid here. We'll turn the water pump on now. And there we go, we've now got water going through the laser tube and it's got rid of all its air. We don't appear to have any leaks. The fan is making quite a lot of noise. Let's close the lid and see whether it changes the airflow. It must be producing a small vacuum in there because when I close the lid, this cover pulls in, if you watch. So there's a little bit of negative pressure inside there, which is good. So let's install the air pump now and see what sort of noise that makes and how much airflow it puts through. So we can plug that again, American connector, we can plug that into the air pump. This part here is the suction, which sucks in air. If you need to, I suppose you can put some sort of filter on there. Pulsing flow, as you'd expect, which is not necessarily the best. You really could do with a steady flow when you're cutting something like acrylic. So I may well change this. We'll see what happens when it gets down to the nozzle. There we go, we'll just tie wrapped up to the bottom frame there, then it won't go wandering while I'm around the front of the machine checking out the flow. We have got a set of LED lights at the back there. They're not necessarily the best place because they've got a tendency to glare in your eyes. So I may well have a go at trying to shift those somewhere onto a pointy down surface, and we'll have to see. I think there are quite a few improvements and changes that I'm going to make to this machine. As I said, the first thing that you'll see that I've done inside the machine is to put a loose pin table in there. Anyway, we came around here to see what the airflow was like. At the moment, the laser is off, otherwise I wouldn't be putting my finger anywhere near there. I just made sure that the laser switch is off and there's nothing happening. And I'm now going to put the air pump on. And I'm fairly sure that you'll be able to hear that it's pulsing. Now that's not necessarily a good thing, so I may well change this pump so that I can run it off of my little workshop compressor that I've got over there. So we can just lower the table with the switch, push the switch down, and the table goes down. That's a beautiful feature, I love that. You put it to the middle position and it stops. Now we can pop a piece of acrylic there. It's a piece of 5mm acrylic. There is a red diode pointer in there. I think it's a very low powered laser diode, to be honest. And the idea is that it should point to where you're going to cut. This little thing that they've given me here, I eventually found out that it wasn't a test piece. It's actually something for setting the focus up with. Now, focus is a whole different ball game. We will play with focus later on because I'm not so sure that that's necessarily the best way of focusing the machine. So we can do one of two things to focus the machine, get to that position. We can raise the table. This could be a little bit tricky. Oh, it's reasonably controllable. Just with the switch we can go up and down. Just a little tickle, tick, tick. That's just about touching it. So if that's the correct focus point, then I suppose when you look at it that red pointer has been set up absolutely correctly, because that red dot does appear to be right underneath the centre of the nozzle. Despite my scepticism, it's actually set up quite well. Well, I suppose there's only one more thing to do, and that's to be brave and press the button and see whether or not the laser is working. So we're moving the head with the arrows. I should do a reset. And that's interesting because 00 is top left, whereas in fact my program is set up for 00 top right. There is I've pressed the max power button, and that gives me the opportunity now here to change the maximum power. Now you do that by pressing, first of all we can go with this left hand button and it goes to the 5. You can see there's a line underneath the 5, so I can now go up to 60, 70, 80%. Then I can come back to the next one, which will make it 81, and then I can come back to the next one, 81.0, enter. And so now the maximum power has gone up there. And I've still got my minimum power set to 50%, I believe. We don't seem to have anything coming out of the laser. We can't. I'm holding it as a pulse. We've got nothing. That's because I haven't got the laser switched on. Would you believe it? Okay, let's be brave now and press the pulse button and see what we get. Well, there was definitely a little pop there. Let's move the head and see what we've finished up with. Now you can't probably see that, but there is a small mark on the surface. Yeah, there's definitely a small mark on the surface there. So we'll just pop that again, pulse. There we go, we saw the flame. That was the vaporization of the acrylic, and I can smell it as well. I want to generate a line of dots if I can. So we should do pulse, move, pulse, pulse, move, pulse, and move. Now here we have just a piece of A4 paper. You can see across here that there appears to be nothing, but when the laser is running, I'm going to put a pulse in the laser now. Oops. So don't put your hand across there or anything else across there while the machine is running, and across there at the other end. Let's do the same thing again for you. I'll press a pulse. We'll just drop the table down, and you can see the table dropping away. Now we can take the workpiece off. Now I think you can clearly see there the smokiness on the surface. Well, it's not on the surface, it's on the back. So we've actually pierced a hole right the way through. Let's hold it up to the light and see whether you can see that. And that looks pretty well focused. That's a very small hole. This is looking very interesting and promising. So we'll power the machine down now, and we'll come back later and check about getting programs in via the either the USB or the PC. First of all, it doesn't matter about the air pump now. We turn the air pump off first, because the air pump is actually only required while we're laser cutting. And as we've turned the laser cutter off already, which was the first thing we turned off, we can now turn the water off because we don't need the cooling in the laser. And then finally we can turn the control switch off.